Okay.
So
Well, I turned my mic down just a little bit. But we'll start the recording here. So for those of you tuning in, thank you so much. Welcome to another episode of Everything Virtual. We really appreciate you guys coming in. Oh my gosh, it's the end of the week already. I'm here with Ronnie. I'm here with John. John, I saved this for once we hit record because I'm gonna make you say it on the air. Are you a drummer? Because that's a super cool drum kit behind you.
yeah. Actually, so the church that I work at, this is their drum set. We have a plant right now that is meeting. It was meeting in a school, so now we are not able to meet in the school, obviously, because of Corona and all that. So it was sitting in a trailer, and it's like a $6,000 TD50 rolling kit. And I was like, "Hey guys,
sweet.
could I borrow that in the meantime?" And they were like, "Yeah."
I mean,
So
that's
house.
the best way to jam out without disrupting anybody.
It's fantastic. It's absolutely great. And I can plug it into my Scarlett and play along with Spotify out loud if I want, or throw in some headphones. Oh, it's great. It's awesome. Yeah, it's good.
All right. I just wanted to so that everyone can get to know, all the members of Everything Virtual a little bit more, and we learned something new today. I mean, I think I knew that you were playing. That's just such a sweet set behind you. I like the setup.
Yeah. Thanks.
Hey, let's get back.
Are you going to ask me about the headboard on my?
No, Ronnie. I already know you play. I know you play headboard in one of the coolest metal bands already. So, all right, guys. Let's dive into some VR news from this week. I feel like there was actually a bunch of stuff. So instead of kind of going topic by topic, let's have this a little bit more free flowing because there's a lot of news that's obviously interconnected within the industry. But I think the overarching main topic that we want to talk about is all these headsets coming out. So there's some news about HP with their G2 headset. There's the Pico Neo 2. And then John, you had mentioned or sent over a video, and I apologize. I don't know. Oh, was this Thrill Seeker? Yeah. It was a Thrill Seeker video kind of diving into Qualcomm being the kind of behind the scenes, for the chip development and stuff like that. So it's exciting times for VR enthusiasts like us and people who might be more into the technical side. How can we break this down for people who are just maybe getting into VR and what this really means for the industry now that we have more headsets coming in and maybe some collaboration across the board to really unify this industry? So, Ronnie, I don't know if you wanted to. I know I'm asking the big questions today.
Yeah, so I guess since you already kind of broke down, I think I guess in terms of tackling these news topics, I think it makes sense to first talk about the HP G2, and then maybe talk about the other stuff hardware-wise, because the other stuff is kind of more like on the standalone, all-in-one VR kind of package. So I guess the first thing we'll talk about is the new HP PC VR tethered headset that was announced this morning. There had been kind of like a sneak peek at the headset previously. This is the one that you and I spoke about on the last news episode, Zane, about a collaboration between HP, Valve, and Microsoft. And there had kind of been, a darkened image that people were brightening up to figure out what it was all about. Yeah, but now, like this morning, there was an official, press release showing all the details about the headset. Ironically, I can't remember exactly when the release date on this is. I don't think I have a feeling they haven't announced a hard release date yet. But if either of you guys see that in any of the articles, let me know. But
I pulled up the article that you had sent me, and just so people can get kind of a visual on what the headset looks like. This is Road to VR.
And actually that article, so people that are interested in finding out, so this article is good just because this is, as far as I know, the first kind of hands-on take on what the headset was like a prototype version of it. There's another article on Road to VR, as well as a lot of the other ones, the other major VR outlets, just talking about the general specs. So if you're interested in the specs, there's probably better articles, but this goes into detail about kind of what the visual impact is of this headset. But essentially, I mean, so long story short, in my opinion, this is the new, so last year, almost a year ago exactly from this time, HP released the original Reverb. So it was called the Reverb G1. And the claim to fame of that headset was that it was a Windows MR headset like some other one. Like usually Windows MR headsets are kind of a cheaper alternative to the Oculus or HTC headsets, but HP's in particular was like a pretty high quality version of those headsets. Use that same kind of tracking system, the inside out tracking that the Windows MR headsets use, as well as the controllers. But the nice thing about it was it had 2K by 2K screens inside. So the resolution was quite a bit. It was even higher than the Index, which came out afterwards. So at the time, as far as like your standard headsets were concerned, it was the highest resolution. Now that said, even though the resolution itself was super high, it still had some issues as far as being a headset that could be easily recommended for gaming. One of the main things was that even though the resolution itself was super high, there were a lot of like motion artifacts and stuff if you were moving fast. So there was like red tones tended to blur a bit, and there was Mura effects, which are essentially like unevenness in the pixels, like the brightness and color of each of the pixels on the screens. When they're slightly off, it can lead to some like visual artifacting that's kind of similar to screen door effect. So some of those things kind of mitigated the really high resolution of the images. So like back when I saw it, it was more for people that just cared about super high resolution and not really about like a lot of fast-paced motion. So it sounds like since last year, HP, like they heard loud and clear that people really liked the reverb for the high resolution, and it was like a pretty well-received headset. But they recognized that there were some downsides to how they implemented the screens and the lenses and that sort of thing. So since then, they apparently developed a relationship with Valve, and Valve, worked with them to like
good company to develop a relationship.
Yeah,
with.
I actually think this is really cool because it kind of, I mean, these companies can talk all they want about, oh yeah, we're super into open platforms and working with others to bring VR to the masses, that sort of thing. But I mean, it looks like Valve's money's where its mouth's at, because so this headset, so apparently they worked with Valve to develop the lenses on this headset. So the lenses are brand new. They use different, even though the resolution of these screens are the same as last year's reverb, they apparently have new screen technology inside, so that those specific issues I talked about, like the motion blurring and the mirror effects, have now been mostly dealt with. And so what you have is kind of it's almost like a melding of last year's HP headset, the Reverb G1, with the Index. So they're still using Microsoft's inside-out tracking system with Windows MR. So you're not going to have Lighthouse tracking. So that's kind of for hardcore enthusiasts that want the best tracking ever. Like it doesn't use base stations, but it does step up the tracking as far as inside-out tracking is concerned. This is the first Windows MR headset to use 4 cameras instead of just 2. So you would hope that the tracking might be more similar to like an Oculus Rift S, for example, that has Rift S has 5 cameras, I think, on it. The Quest has 4. So this is now more comparable to the Quest. So it should, they claim it's like 1.4x, times the response rate of their old tracking. So basically, so it's going to be quite a bit better tracking than last year's. And as far as I'm aware of, I think like Windows MR inside-out tracking, while not as good as Oculus's inside-out tracking, is really like a close second, just in terms of, and this is when they were using 2 cameras. So who knows? Maybe the 4 camera system now is going to be very close to, if not on par with, Oculus's inside-out tracking. Which, if that's the case, like we're not talking, HTC Cosmos, problem, like hopefully, and we're speaking early now, right? But it sounds like most likely this will have good inside-out tracking. But then it has a lot of the ergonomics of the Index. So it has the over-the-ear headphones, the ones that are not the headphones, the speakers rather, that kind of float over your ears. They're the exact same ones that Valve used on the Index, exactly. And then it has the nicer lenses, and then it uses that inside-out tracking, and it has it looks like it has a very similar faceplate and the faceplate and head mounting system looks very much like the Index. So I mean, essentially, this is like an Index Lite minus the controllers, which it does not use the index controllers. It uses its own now slightly
controllers, right?
Yeah, they're
they look very much like Quest controllers.
Exactly, and that's what. So last year, people complained, like people in general complained a little bit about Windows MR controllers, and including the reverbs. And so we don't know yet what these are going to exactly be like, but it looks like they're bringing this is a highly modified version of the previous controllers that look a lot more like Oculus Touch controllers. So hopefully, I mean, in my opinion, if they can more mimic an Oculus Touch controller, that's going to again bring that more in line with an Oculus. So
with like a standard across the industry, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, this looks like a really good, and the price point is $600.
Yeah.
So
it looks like a fall release.
No, so I really think, I mean, in my opinion, this is kind of what the HTC Cosmos should have been, right? This is basically for people that are willing to spend a little bit more money than the Rift S, but don't want to spend $1,000 to get an index. They can get something that's kind of in the middle. This is going to be, better clarity, supposedly the best clarity. So that article that Road to VR talked about, I mean, and we're talking the standard headsets here. We're not talking like Star VR and all these, kind of several $1,000 headsets.
Yeah, boutique kind of.
Yeah, we're talking for mass consumer targeted headsets. It sounds like this is probably going to be the headset to beat. In terms of visual clarity. And then this article does a good job of explaining what visual clarity is to them. And I like the explanation here that Road to VR provided. I mean, essentially they're talking about, hey, resolution is really important, brightness and color is really important, but all of these side issues like motion clarity and like all these things factor into glare, for example, all that stuff makes a difference. And this is the best overall, balanced headset that they've seen on the consumer side of all those issues. So
does it say what the refresh rate is by chance?
Yeah, so that's the other downside compared to the index. It's 90 hertz.
I mean, that's still better than a Rift S, though.
Exactly. So it is better than the Rift S, not quite index level.
It's not far off, though. What is it?
No.
What is index?
Well, index can go up to 144.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. So, but realistically, like me, for example, I usually run it at 120. And the steps that you can pick front on the index, you can pick 144, 120, 90, and then you can go down to 80, I think, or even 72, maybe. I'm not sure.
Interesting.
But yeah, so those are kind of, so anyways, so yeah, it does have a 90 hertz refresh rate, which is good, but not as good as the index. And then it also has a similar, people are saying the 114 degree field of view is very similar to Oculus field of view.
Yeah.
So which is a little bit less than the index, but again, like it's a pretty, good amount. The other thing that it has over the index is it's quite a bit lighter. So I think this says 1.21. I even saw somewhere else claiming that it was 1.11. So I'm not sure exactly what the weight is, but I know compared to the index is apparently like closer to 1.7 pounds. Yeah, so it's a decent amount lighter. If I'm remembering, I do know it's lighter. So if I'm not remembering the numbers perfectly, anybody can speak out in the comments. But yeah, it's lighter. Doesn't have some of the bells and whistles of the index, including base station tracking and the high refresh rate. But then for some people, it has what could arguably be more convenient, which is inside out tracking if it's good, and it probably will be pretty good. And it has different controllers, but hopefully pretty good controllers. So I mean, I think and for a $600 price point, like I said, I think this is for someone that is looking for a slightly more premium experience to the Rift S, but doesn't want to go all the way. I mean, you're saving $400 from an index, and you're also not dealing with inside out tracking. So if that's a deterrent for you, if you don't want to have to set up sensors, then this is a nice alternative. Now, the other thing I've heard is possibly by the time this comes out, who knows if the Rift S goes down in price to like $300 or something like that. I mean, if that were the case, then that becomes a hard proposition again to do you want to double the price? But
yeah, it would be.
Yeah,
you can basically get a Rift S for that use. I mean, like in some change, like 340-ish. This is what I think I bought mine for before the pandemic. So
yeah, so that's what. So I mean, there are. I mean, coming from the Index, me personally,
yeah.
I mean, if the visuals are really that much clearer than these other headsets, like I hate glare in the Index. So like I'm not going to be upgrading to this. Don't get me wrong or anything like that. But I could see where it would fit, like for people that are on the market for a brand new headset. If they didn't, put down any money on a headset yet, this might be one to kind of wait for reviews to see what you think.
For sure.
And yeah, so and like I said, I think it's kind of a nice. It's an interesting story because it tells me that Valve probably isn't interested in manufacturing kind of a lower tier of the Index, because if they had those kind of plans, I kind of doubt they would work to this extent with an outside party.
Yeah, for sure.
But at the same time, it's awesome that they're willing to do that and collaborate.
Yeah. Yes.
So because I mean, I know with the head speakers, for example, those are things that when people have tried them on the Index, everybody's like, man, this is the new standard.
Yeah.
I hope everybody gets these on their next headsets, and then we already have another player using them. So hopefully that means the next Oculus headsets will have something comparable. It'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
So all good stuff, and I mean, looking at people's kind of quick comments about it, I mean, I think in general it seems like it was received pretty well. I do see some people that are like, what, we want wireless, we don't want wired anymore, or this or that. But I mean, really, I think this is just the next evolution of a PC VR headset. It's just another option for, I think, what's already kind of out there, maybe a little bit better. If in the future, if Oculus is really going to push more standalone, and if the market starts pushing more standalone, I mean, we're already in this world now, but I mean, eventually it's probably going to be, you're probably going to want something that can do both standalone and PC VR. But this is a nice, I like that we have options. So
I mean, I hope, like you said, it's good that there's options. To me, it's a lot of like incremental upgrades, and I feel like the only people who would be interested initially would be those who don't already have a headset, right? Like I don't know that any of us would look at this and be like, I am going to throw down an extra $600, or I want to trade in what I currently have. Like I don't know that it offers that much more, but I think the big takeaway for me on this is the fact that we have more players entering the game. It's good to see Valve's partnership, even if that means kind of creating different tiers and with those partnerships. And at the end of the day, incremental upgrades are still good, because like their generation 2 is coming out a year and a half later, maybe even like 15 months later than the original Reverb, right?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know exactly when the release date is, I don't think, but probably,
Well, yeah. So I mean, it's they released the Reverb. It said May of 2019, and it says it's coming in this fall. So between under a year and a half.
Yeah.
Of course, if everything goes to plan. So it's cool to see that happening. And it's definitely a much faster cycle than we've seen other manufacturers and hardware manufacturers work at. So. I don't know. I mean, it's exciting, and obviously HP is a big company. I think we talked about on a previous episode how it's good to see bigger companies kind of throwing some capital in there.
I also want to just do a quick shout out to HP for apparently having a really awesome kind of marketing reveal event today, because I didn't get a chance to jump into it myself, but apparently they did the whole like kind of like an Apple press conference type thing, but all in VR and alt space.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance, but I retweeted kind of after the fact. I saw a tweet from HP. One of their employees had put out all the times that they were doing, kind of VR related shows, and people sounded like they really liked it. So so I just wanted to give props to them for doing something like that, especially right now. I think that's a really cool idea.
Okay. Do you want to mention the Pico Neo 2?
Yeah, so we can talk about that real quick, because that's something that I think we'll be talking about for quite a lot for quite a while, because I'm just going to tie this in with the other video that John had kind of pointed me to from Thrill Seeker, He's a VR YouTuber. But in general, and I had heard a bunch of rumblings about this, and I think actually I think from Oculus when we were. It was either when I was at Oculus Connect or it might have been GDC before that. Actually, it might have been GDC. But essentially, what we're talking about here is Qualcomm is coming up with some kind of an XR chipset that a lot of people are going to be trying to put into different. They're going to be trying to put these into different VR related devices. So Oculus initially worked with. They initially worked with Qualcomm to develop the chip that's inside of the Quest.
Mm-hmm.
And some of their working with Qualcomm led to specific changes that Oculus was hoping Qualcomm would implement on the hardware level to their next chipset for future versions of the Quest. And I think some of those talks probably led them to also come up with their own, chips that they can use with other manufacturers. So I don't exactly know what the relationship is between, Oculus and Qualcomm, and if anything are proprietary to Oculus versus Qualcomm can do what they want with it, if that's necessarily making it to this chipset here. But the idea is that Qualcomm is getting more and more excited about VR. They've had experience working with Oculus, obviously, on kind of customizing a chip to some extent. And this is their first kind of solution that they've put together that is more XR focused. So there have been a number of different announcements coming out of these Qualcomm chips, and the upcoming Qualcomm set will be quite a bit more powerful than the previous Qualcomm chips that were in the Quest. I mean, it's just the natural evolution of all these chips and how they upgrade, pretty substantially because of the cell phone market. So every year or two, you're getting newer and newer chips. And the Quest actually was a somewhat outdated chip, I think, by the time it was released, just because it was the first time that Oculus had brought a product like this to market. So it just took longer for them to kind of get everything nailed down. I expect their future headsets will have more up-to-date Qualcomm chips in them. And it sounds like these are going to be more up to date as well. And I was just saying it's interesting because we're seeing everything. I mean, these are standalone headsets. No word, as far as I know, is whether these other headsets that are non-Oculus will be able to connect to the PC in any way for PC VR. I don't really know what the status of that kind of stuff would be, But yeah, they're standalones, and I know Pico had announced, they had already released their own kind of headsets in the past. There were other manufacturers that are trying to put out headsets that are more social VR focused. Mm-hmm. So they're only using hand tracking. They're not going to actually support real controllers.
Yeah, I saw that too.
So I think this is just interesting to see that, Oculus is going to have competition on the standalone VR side. And that it sounds like a lot of people could potentially become interested with Qualcomm kind of leading the way as far as an outside standard besides Oculus for what standalone VR can be. So I mean, if you think of cell phones, how Android phones, there are all kinds of flavors of Android phones out there. Sounds like that could come to pass with standalone VR with what Qualcomm is doing. Mm-hmm. And it also just tells you that, if there's a lot of folks out there that are interested in making new hardware, that, they must see a big future in VR that is great for what we're into. So honestly, it's dizzying how much is being announced. So
no, it really is. So just for those listening, and I'll make sure that we add it to the notes as well, the show notes. It was Thrill Seeker's Tuesday Newsday from this past Tuesday, May 26th, where they covered the Qualcomm video. And I don't. Did you have any other big takeaways, John? Because I know you had messaged that video to us, and we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, Ronnie hit most of the stuff. I think for me, just like what intrigued me the most was the notion of sort of the bigger like cell phone carriers and companies that do like cable and all that sort of stuff, like getting
that's a big deal.
Getting into it, like
5G. So that's
5G, exactly.
Yeah, so that's actually a big. I mean, I don't know all the details on that, and you can go talk about it, John, if you want. but yeah, the 5G. I mean, they're talking about also offloading a lot of. I mean, the idea is that they're hoping that you'll be, I guess, either through server technology or even your own PCs, that they're really pushing for using the big bandwidth you get from 5G to offload the processing. So even though this is a pretty powerful standalone headset, as far as like when you're comparing it to the Quest, it it obviously doesn't match up to like a strong PC or something like that. They're really pushing these as 5G enabled, so that hopefully you would be using hardware off of the headset to power the VR experiences that you're doing on the headset. So I think that stuff is interesting, and I think that's the future. So I think offloading processing to and using wireless to really have great VR experiences without having to have something bulky on your head or a cord is the way of the future. I'm not sure if 5G is going to solve that problem personally, just because from what I hear, 5G is basically like a huge pipe, like it's tons of bandwidth, but there's still latency. And so I think the latency, at least in the here and now, might still be an issue. But
so just speaking into that a little bit, and I don't like my phone doesn't have 5G or anything like that. I haven't personally tried streaming anything that way. I know Stadia's had a ton of issues with that sort of thing, but I think if I'm not mistaken, it's going to work better for say like something like streaming like Alex, something huge, to a headset that's more akin to a Quest than like a Rift S or an Index that is less powerful. They can't handle that sort of experience on its own, but streaming it potentially. What I've noticed just with like even just streaming like PS Now on my PC is that games that are multiplayer do struggle. Like there's no doubt about that with latency and that sort of thing. However, games that are just like story driven, like Alex would be, like specifically I play Spider-Man on my PC, like the PS4 Spider-Man game on my PC through what PlayStation servers or whatever, and I mean it's dang near flawless. Like it's pretty close to perfect. It sacrifices graphics a little bit and those sorts of things, but at the end of the day, like the experience is 100% there. Like you can play the game, and I think maybe that's a thing, and that's just for games though. I think we're onto something here with the social aspect of it. Seeing controllers and just using hands and gestures and what have you, all that sort of thing, and having all these big players really start to take an interest in it. I've been saying this ever since I got into VR as an enthusiast, or whatever you want to call it. It's definitely going to be in the next 5 to 10 years. Like cell phones are not going to be a thing anymore. You're not going to have a brick in your pocket. It's going to be something different. Who knows what that looks like? Who knows if that's like an on-set display that's like Google Glass wanted to be, that was just way too premature for that sort of tech to really have mass adoption or be practical for everyday use. It'll probably be some sort of mix, I would guess, between AR and VR. Like he mentioned in that video, they're calling it XR, I think, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. So something like that could be, like viable for the future. But just seeing the interest, seeing these big companies be like, yeah, this is not just a rinky-dink little fad that's going away. It's just progressing and getting better, and more people are adopting it largely because of Quest. Like however you feel about Facebook, Oculus, whatever, there's no denying that over the past year, the Quest has been the gateway for many folks to get into VR for the first time. And I'll say this, even the Rift S, it's like you were saying with the G2, that inside out tracking, there is something to be said about not having to set up base stations every time. Like I can still, even with my Rift S, like if you have a powerful enough laptop, I have a Razer laptop, I can take that thing anywhere, plug up the Rift S, and essentially use it as a Quest. Like it's portable. You can do it anywhere if you've got a laptop that's beefy enough to handle it.
It's not uncommon now.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically as portable as a Quest, if you have like a gaming laptop or something.
Yep.
Basically.
Yeah.
So
exactly. So it's all moving incrementally. But the thing is, like we see it as incrementally in real time because it's it's just happening as it's happening. But if you look at the actual timeline, it's very, very, very quick. So well, it'll be interesting to see what the next 5 years even looks like for sure.
Yeah, and no, and I've seen some people kind of question whether it's the software or the hardware that people need to be focusing on. And I mean, I to be honest, like yeah, the software needs work, but there's a lot of great software out there.
Yeah.
I think a big factor here is just getting the hardware to be light enough and convenient enough for people to give the software a shot. So I think any time we see these kind of announcements and more people focusing on the hardware, it's a good thing. So
yeah, I agree.
And and as far as software goes, I know there are a couple of big ones that were announced recently, a couple that caught our interest. I don't know if you want to get to those.
Yeah, no, I figured we could just wrap up. I mean, these are more so just announcements. We don't have much other info just yet, but I mean, two pretty big ones. The first one for people who are Star Wars fans, I believe it was the ILM lab, right? So they just took Vader Immortal out of Oculus exclusive, and it's going to PSVR. And their next project is Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy, which all we know right now
Galaxy's
is
Edge. Tales from the Galaxy's Edge.
Tales from the Galaxy's Edge. Thank you.
Yeah.
And all I'm reading here is that it takes place sometime between episodes 8 and 9. So, I played Vader Immortal 1. I actually just bought Vader Immortal Episode 2, and I'm excited to jump into that and give my thoughts hopefully on an upcoming game talk.
2 is but it's good.
Oh, it is? Yeah, no, I mean it looks fantastic. So so it's I think this is obviously, no matter how you feel about the recent movies that came out, it's obviously a universe that people want to be a part of and explore further. There's nothing as immersive as VR right now that allows you to do that.
As far as I'm concerned, these are all extra shots to get it right. So
exactly,
I'm with you there.
So that's number one.
But yeah, so I'm super and I'm excited about that one too because it's cool that they're adding more and more backstory to the Disneyland and Disney World part, because those sections which I haven't had a chance to experience. I was actually planning on going to Disney World this July, but this was several months ago. And then coronavirus hit, and then so we kind of all those plans kind of fell apart. I think it's cool that they're expanding. The sections of the park there are Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. It's kind of like its own new, outpost on the edge of the galaxy that doesn't really have its own backstory. They were starting to build it, but it was new when they created the park. So this is going to kind of tell some stories, and I don't know if this is just one of many that they plan on doing, or if this is, but the announcement that they made on StarWars.com did connect the two and said that they're excited to be telling these stories both at the parks and at people's homes. So I don't know if maybe they'll have a way to experience this there for people that want to try VR at the parks.
They have it. What's it called? Shoot, I'm blanking out. It used to be Downtown Disney. It's no longer. It's Disney Springs.
Disney Springs.
Yeah, there's a VR arcade there. So I'm sure that you could go there, play it, and then have your extra backstory if you wanted to. If you don't have a headset or whatever, because I know that's a big thing at Disney Springs is doing little things like that that are more not rides and stuff, but arcadey sort of deals. So
no, I'm definitely excited. I mean, it's anything to kind of explore that further is always going to be fun. And we'll finish off with this. The last one is Vertigo Games, which they are the developer responsible for Arizona Sunshine. They're publishing another game. We don't have any information, I believe, in terms of the only thing that we know is we're going to get a look at it on June 8th during Upload VR showcase. But this will be the second game that they publish. After Arizona Sunshine came out, they did A Fisherman's Tale last year. So again, and Ronnie, I think you brought up a good point earlier. Just making sure that there's a distinction between what they develop versus what they publish. But obviously, Vertigo Games has a really great track record. So I think that anything that they are working on is something of interest to us and something that we'll be following along with.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome, guys. Well, I think we covered everything. For those listening and tuning in, we appreciate you guys. If there is something you guys want us to dive into, or if there's something we missed from this past week, definitely let us know. We would love to chat about it on the next episode. And until then, we'll catch you guys all on the next Game Talk.